it's taboo to talk about money and especially how much you earn, but chatting with colleagues when we were at lunch is the only reason I knew I was overtaxed in my first paycheck.
Most trusts will have a professional support unit. You can access career counselling, you can access therapy through places like Practitioner Health, your GP, the university if you're still at uni as well.
You know, you mentioned taking a career break, which is obviously a great choice, but when you're in the middle of it, that's not an option for everyone.
Hi, my name's Polly, and welcome to this episode of Coffee on Call, the Foundation Medicine podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the good, the bad, the ugly, the things that you didn't expect when you started your transition to being a foundation doctor. Now, joining me today, I've got Mike.
Hi, guys.
And Ruby.
Hi, guys.
So, to kick things off, let's talk about that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. What came as a shock to you when you first started practicing medicine?
Well, I feel like graduation hits and that it's all of these amazing things. You finally get there. You're so ready for it to happen. You graduate, it's an amazing day, isn't it? You get dressed up and things. And then after that, it's one good thing after another. Grad holidays, grad balls, and then stuff gets real. All of those things cost money. And then you have to move to a new place. You've got to pay 5 weeks of rent. Months, that'd be a lot. 5 weeks of rent. And you've got to survive as a professional at a time when there's so much going on. Like, it's basically like freshers again. You meet so many new people, you go out, you do things with no money. And that's the biggest shock to me. It's like how you're running on fumes at the end.
It's one of the things people don't often realise is that although you start work in August, that first pay slip's not going to land until the 27th, 28th of August.
Yeah.
So you get your last student loan sort of at the start of your summer term. You've got the whole summer of all these fun things happening, and then you're not going to get your next paycheck until the end of August. And I think that can be really challenging and something that we often don't talk about. Yeah. You know, you're really busy, buying lunches, buying coffee at work as well. Suddenly
just getting into it, yeah.
And also just like getting to work, paying for your commute and things
Petrol,
like that. Yeah. Any sort of thoughts and feelings you have on that, Mike? Anything that you experienced?
Yeah, I think it's just, you know, you go from med school where you are busy and you're doing a lot, but you are still a student. You don't necessarily have much responsibilities. You know, you do have a lot of spare time still for hobbies, seeing friends. And then you suddenly go into a full-time rota where you're really busy. You're working night shifts, you're working long days, and it's hard to find the time to do the basics like cooking, cleaning, taking care of your flat, particularly if you've moved into a new flat, and finding the time for your hobbies as well. So balancing all that alongside starting a new job, alongside a month of essentially not getting a paycheck and having to pay for all this stuff in advance is really difficult.
Yeah,
feels like you're spinning a lot of plates.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
Something's going to drop, but it gets so much better and easier.
Yeah.
Especially when the first paycheck hits. That's a really good day.
Yeah, and you should always plan what you're going to buy with your first paycheck.
Yeah. Big time.
Got to have a good purchase.
Have a holiday plans.
Yeah. I mean, there's also lots of things out there that can help support early career doctors in terms of financial support. So I personally have used a service called Medics Money, which they have a podcast, they have their own website, they can teach you all those things you've never learned about tax codes, which suddenly becomes...
How to read a paycheck.
Yeah. Just like, I don't know what 1175L means. Like, I've never had to care about this before. So there's loads of resources out there that can help you become a bit more financially literate when you start working.
And a lot about pensions as well on Medics Money.
Yeah. Was there anything else that you guys used when you first started out? Or anything you were aware of that can help a bit with money?
So I was aware of people that had gone through it in the years above, and I kind of knew that I needed to save for this 5 weeks of rent thing. So I did start to put some stuff away because I feel like your last bursary payment comes in Easter, so it's a long stretch. So just having a little bit set aside for when that was going to hit, so it wasn't so much of a hit, was really useful. But I know of like other people in my year that kind of went for prizes. So a lot of like the essay prizes that get published in med school, not very many people go for them, and there's often a money prize attached. So your chances are you're in with quite a good chance of winning something there. Yeah. So that can be useful.
Yeah, I think for me, when you're in med school, you get to know the people in the years above you and below you quite well. It becomes quite a big community.
Yeah.
So talking to the people who've been through it before already and just saying, you know, how do I look at a paycheck? How much should I be expecting? Do you think this amount is about right? Yeah. And they can guide you towards those other resources, or they can say, oh, actually, sounds like you've been overtaxed on that one or undertaxed. You should ask about that. You should speak to your rota coordinators. They can guide you and signpost you to the right places.
This is such a good tip that no one gave me. Is like, I know it's taboo to talk about money and especially how much you earn, but chatting with colleagues when we were at lunch is the only reason I knew I was overtaxed in my first paycheck. If I hadn't have spoken about it, I would have never have known. So it's really important to compare because there will be differences.
Yeah, and it might be the reason you realise you're owed like £1,000 a month or something silly.
Amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we touched on this particularly, Mike. You mentioned that actually dealing with all of this can be quite overwhelming. So you've got these big transitions, you're working full time. And I know that I personally, particularly towards the end of F2, started to notice that this was having an effect on my life. And you might hear a term thrown around called burnout. And I think we wanted to take this opportunity to talk a bit about our experiences with that, maybe some tips to try and avoid it, or if you're in it, how to get out of it. So if you guys had any experiences you think you'd feel comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, medicine's tough, isn't it? You do 5 years of medical school. It's a long slog, loads of exams, really difficult. And then you go suddenly into becoming a doctor. You're dropped in it and it's really difficult rota, really difficult job. And it is absolutely exhausting. And I got to the end of my first year of being a doctor. And I think it was probably only looking back that I realized just how tired I was all the time. And I don't think we're necessarily the best at talking about it sometimes. So it's just learning to recognize those signs in yourself that actually you're getting a bit exhausted, you're getting a bit tired, and trying to do something to help with that.
I feel like when I was an FY1, I definitely burnt out. I feel I had quite a lot of anxiety at med school, and I thought I'm going to be really good at recognising this in myself if it starts to happen again. And I didn't recognise it until I was more out of it, or until
Creeps up on you, doesn't it?
the people around me kind of pointed it out. But especially hit around, I think Christmas can be a tricky time to watch out for it, because the days are short. You go to work when it's dark, you come home when it's dark. Things like not going to the gym anymore, putting on weight, making really unhealthy choices, or going for the easy option are all stuff that happened. It just got to the point where I wasn't enjoying much anymore. But the thing is, that's one of the positives about rotational training. I think it was a bit job dependent, and you can come out of it and everyone's in the same boat. So when you do start to talk about it, it turns out a lot of people are feeling the same.
Yeah.
And I had that, and we got through it together, which was really nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I think my experience is hopefully a unique one that won't affect other people, but I graduated in 2020, and if we think back to then, it wasn't a great time to start being a doctor. And so by the time I came to the end of my F2, I really felt that burnout. And you're right, I noticed it because I suddenly realised I was only eating meal deals at work. I was going to work in A&E and then just sleeping the rest of the time and not doing any of my hobbies. And I kind of dealt with it by saying I need a bit of a career break here, and did an education year where I was completely non-clinical, worked 9 to 5, and that was what I needed. There are lots of support systems out there. You have an educational or clinical supervisor who can signpost you. Most trusts will have
therapy.
Yeah. Most trusts will have a professional support unit. You can access career counselling. You can access therapy through places like Practitioner Health, your GP, the university if you're still at uni as well.
Yeah.
And I think recognising that it's might feel like a taboo topic, but most doctors have experienced periods of burnout and stress. And having those conversations, someone might say, oh, well, actually, if you speak to the training program director, they signposted me to this amazing scheme, and making sure you're accessing
We're all
these.
only human. It's natural, and it's a stressful job. We just need to find ways to recognise it and have an outlet for that stress, I think.
I think the thing I've got good at now is recognising it early, recognising the early signs. And it's completely individual dependent. It's recognising in yourself when you're starting to get, show those signs of anxiety, or not doing the things you normally do, not cooking as well as you normally do. That's a big one for me. And then just sort of, you mentioned taking a career break, which is obviously a great choice, but when you're in the middle of it, that's not an option for everyone. So, it's trying to make yourself do the things that help with dealing with those kind of feelings. So for me, it's making myself go to the gym, it's making myself cook proper meals and not rely on meal deals and things like that. It's making myself spend time with friends.
Sleep hygiene.
Sleeping more.
Using your annual leave. I mean, one of the great things about working in the NHS is that we get a pretty generous annual leave allowance compared to a lot of the private sector. And I mean, I still to this day, as soon as I get my rota, I look, that looks like it's going to be a really challenging stretch, or over Christmas,
get my leaving early.
I'm working lots of nights over Christmas, and that's going to make me feel really rubbish, so I'm going to get a good block of leaving. And when you start noticing those patterns in yourself, having just a little stretch of annual leave to look forward to, or to break up a set of shifts, it can make that difference and allow you to sort of reset and recharge.
I'm a black belt in getting a week out of 2 days of annual leave. You need to
you
start looking into that.
And that's something where your colleagues can be really helpful. If you speak to say, Joe was on surgery last time, and week 6 on the rota where you've got the nights into the 0 days, you can get 10 days off by just taking 3 days of leave, and that's the kind of thing that really helps going forward.
Get straight on a plane.
Absolutely. But I think overall there are lots of things that are come as a surprise, that take a lot of getting used to in that first year. And I guess, is there sort of one thing that you'd want to tell our fifth years sort of transitioning to F1, one thing that they should prioritise to, you know, get through these more challenging aspects of the work, of the job?
Look forward to it. Being a doctor's really good. Like,
Yeah.
you work so hard to get to this point and you're here. And yeah, it is stressful, but if you use your leave, get it in early, make friends with the rota coordinators, you'll have a great time.
Yeah.
And coming out of it now, it's really exciting to take the next steps,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think.
Mine was going to be get your leave in. You know,
Yeah,
if you
always
don't
get your
use it,
leave
you
in.
lose it. And you don't want to be that person that leaves all their
Yeah.
leave till the end and then doesn't get it
Yeah.
approved.
Yeah.
So get it in early, try and book something, try and book a holiday, do something with friends, make the most of your leave, because it is tough.
Yeah.
But
And the rota coordinator's not the enemy. There's some good ones
Yeah.
out there.
Yeah, they are your friend. So hopefully that's been helpful for you guys. But just remember, everyone's in it together, and there's always someone there to talk to and to give you support if you feel like you need it when you start work as an F1. So that's the end of today's episode. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thanks, guys.
And thanks very much.